in the lead up to WrestleMania 6 and the Ultimate Challenge with the immortal Hulk Hogan defending the WWF Championship against the Ultimate Warrior and his Intercontinental Championship. A clash of the Titans, a clash that we would never see again. Ever. There's no chance that World Championship Wrestling would decide to bring in the Ultimate Warrior for a rematch that nobody wanted to see, and my goddamn goodness, ha ha ha, I won the war, damn it. Boy, the Halloween Havoc 98 match certainly was the absolute drizzling shits. One of the worst matches of the 1990s. But before that, we got to see the WWF roster invade the hallowed halls of Madison Square Garden for this card. And boy, what a card it was. I'm John Rentham with the retro review of WWE at MSG for March 19th, 1990. And yeah, I'm just going to offer some tidbits about the particular wrestlers and talk about a few things that they were doing around this point, because the matches, there were actually a few decent matches on the show. One that surprised me, but good goddamn Christ. It was cool that this got uploaded to the WWE Vault channel just earlier today. And it is nice that they're finally putting a lot of their library on YouTube. And they're able to monetize and whatever, because they've been sitting on all this shit for all this time. So, some of these were in future video releases for Coliseum Home Video. Gorilla Monsoon, Lord Alfred Hayes, and Hillbilly Jim on commentary. And look, Hillbilly Jim, very likable, and offered a few neat little, funny bits. Commentary was here and there. Lord Alfred Hayes sucked. He was the shits. I had thought he wasn't that bad as a kid, but good goddamn Christ, I was ignorant. And Gorilla Monsoon, bless him, always had exuberance and always offered great terminology because he was very learned, very well educated, and had been a big draw for the WWF and then the WWF, and would be in the company until his passing, unfortunately, at the very end of this decade, the very end of the 90s, that is. But Monsoon needed Heenan or Ventura to work off of, because he didn't have anybody to work with here. Boom, we are already in the ring. Iron Mike Sharp against Jim Powers with his very feathered hair. Jim Powers and the Young Stallions, or in like 6 to 8 minute matches, singles matches that is, he was fine. This was 13 pissing minutes. Now, Iron Mike Sharp, very well-traveled enhancement talent, always made the most of any television time he got, was a big imposing individual, and apparently, even though he was a bit odd with, workout regiments and whatever it was, he apparently was well-liked by people. But again, 13 minutes. 13 goddamn minutes for a match that deserved to go 6 minutes. So, yeah, Jim Powers won with a power slam. I guess that kind of makes sense. And it wasn't the most painful thing on this show. More on that later. But yeah, Jim Powers, they had gotten away from him being part of the Young Stallions because I believe Paul Roma and Hercules were about to team up as Power and Glory. And Iron Mike Sharp would continue to be an enhancement talent. I think even into the Raw days and possibly even closer to the Attitude Era. I'm trying to remember when he retired. But there we are. That was certainly a match that existed. Jim Powers would go on to be in WCW, mostly in enhancement matches, and even make it into the Nitro era, where he was on every bit of gas known to man. I mean, seriously, look at him here, and then look at him in like 96, 97. It's insane. He wasn't the only one, but still. And then Black Bart against Hercules. I have no memory of Black Bart being in WWF at all. Apparently he was there for about a year, according to a friend of mine, but I really have no memory of him being there. But then again, given the fact that Dallas was on its ass as far as wrestling territory, he would go back there after this for, I believe, Global Wrestling, the Global Wrestling Federation, if I remember right. Kick, punch, it's all in the mind, and we almost got 4 minutes of a sleeper. I mean, we get mild breaks, but yeah, Black Bart, wonderful territorial wrestler. Don't know if he necessarily fit here. Hercules at least was better here than he would be by the end of his run, where he just had totally given up.
And he won with the torture rack variation. I have to say, he did that just about as well as Luger. I mean, Luger did always seem like he was having an aneurysm trying to do it, but nevertheless, Hercules won in a match that was probably twice as long as it needed to be. The Orient Express took on, along with Mr. Fuji, took on Demolition. Don't know why they added Demolition's theme. Demolition, by the way, going into the Hall of Fame as of this recording. Referee Earl Hebner, finally, they got a referee that didn't look like they were still seen in black and white. Seriously, outside of Earl Hebner, look at the other referees on this show. It is astonishing. They had to use New York Athletic Commission referees because, good Lord, these fuckers looked old. So, Demolition was very over. They were about to win the tag titles from the Colossal Connection, or Colossal Connection in English, Haku and Andre the Giant. Orient Express were a very good team. Theme certainly was a choice. Probably a little racist even back then. Axe got a hot tag. The crowd cheered. Fuji tapped him with his cane. That's not a euphemism. He actually had a cane. And Axe got it and was going to attack him. And then Kato threw the powder in his eyes. I think that was Kato. And there we are. And it was a count-out victory for the Orient Express. I mean, it protects Demolition. The crowd kind of farted at the finish. And then Coco Beware took on Frenchie Martin, who was the former manager of Dino Bravo. Jimmy Hart was the manager of Dino Bravo at this point. Yeah, Frenchie Martin, who I'm sure actually was a good wrestler in his day. Whose idea was it for this to go 12 pissing minutes? This should have gone 4. There were boring chants. Frenchie had a nerve hold on Coco Beware that I think is still lasting to this day. And I think Frenchie Martin has been dead for about 20 years. Coco won with the goddamn Brainbuster, which, great movie, hit that really well. But goddamn, 12 minutes of this shit. Coco would go on to have a match at WrestleMania 6 and would continue to wrestle, into, I believe, the early Raw days. He would team up with Owen Hart as part of High Energy. Frenchie Martin would go home. I assume sometime after this. I know he has to be dead by this point because, my God, the guy looked like he was about 70 at this point. I actually think he was only in his 40s. But, yeah, boring chants, a lot of that stuff, nothing really going on. Earthquake, along with Jimmy Hart, took on Hacksaw Jim Duggan. The biggest surprise of the show, because actually, one, the crowd was into it, and they actually kept things moving. Granted, we did get the usual slowdown stuff with Earthquake as he was a big monster. Rest in peace, John Tenta. And we got a distraction. We got a splash in the corner. And Earthquake won with the elbow. Didn't win with the big one, won with the elbow. Got a bit of a beat down afterwards. Duggan tumbles to the outside. Jim Powers, for what he's worth, which wasn't much because he got tossed out, and Coco Beware got tossed out. So, hey, Coco, we know you just went 12 minutes with a glorified couch cushion, but go back out there and get tossed out by John Tenta. Okay. Duggan then got his wood out and chased everybody away. Duggan would go on to, I believe, Duggan had a match with Dino Bravo at WrestleMania 6, would continue to have appearances in WWF until leaving for WCW in 1994, and he would be the U.S. champion being Steve Austin until he lost it to Vader, would continue to be employed in WCW until 2000, and has been, he's a double cancer survivor, I believe. He had it sometime in the late 90s, and then had it again, and beat it, and credit to him. Earthquake, unfortunately, would pass away due to bladder cancer, I believe, in the 2000s, the mid-2000s. Very unfortunate. Earthquake never quite reached the heights that he should have. You could argue that the whole monster thing was getting passé by the time he teamed up with Typhoon as the Natural Disasters. But realistically, they didn't do him any favors in WCW as Avalanche, which was so close to Earthquake. And then the Shark. He was the Shark. The fucking Shark. And he was Golga. Nevertheless, Sean Mooney, who? I mean, I have to channel Bobby Heenan every day. I like Sean Mooney. Sean Mooney seems like a nice guy, but it's impossible to not do that for people of a certain age when you just remember Bobby Heenan doing that. Talks Bret Hart about facing Rick Martel, and also him and Jim Neidhart are going to face the Bolsheviks at WrestleMania 6, and that match was over before this interview was cut. The match was over in like 30 seconds. Rick Martel talks. He was a tremendous heel. Brutus Beefcake talked. God help us. This is pre-parasailing, so he really had no excuse for talking like an idiot. And then Mr. Burbick called the Ultimate Warrior a painted pansy. Oh boy. So Rick Martel and Bret Hart had a classic, a great match as you would expect. Rick Martel being a great heel. Bret Hart was subbing for Roddy Piper, who I don't know why he wasn't there. I know that he was going to be facing off against Bad News Brown at WrestleMania 6 in that ill-fated encounter. Ill-fated for a lot of reasons. The whole black and white thing, I'm not saying Piper didn't have good intentions, but there was no way that was not going to be seen as offensive. I mean, good God. Good God in heaven. But yeah, Bad News Brown was not on there. Maybe I think they were running another show, I'm guessing, just because they were usually running two towns, and Hogan was not on the show. Neither was Savage, neither was Dusty, so I'm guessing maybe they were running another town. But so Bad News Brown was probably hitting the ghetto blaster on somebody else. Blaster damn near killed her. Finally, something worth seeing is what I noted. Rick stalling, being a great heel, posing, looking great. He should be in the Hall of Fame in my personal opinion. Lord Alfred Hayes was terrible at commentary and also not a good guy, so fuck him. I'm glad he's dead. And promotional consideration paid for the, oh my God, it burns, because he's probably in hell for all the stuff that he did. So, Piper, what Piper said about Lord Alfred Hayes. And Piper was not given into, like, making up stuff about, people that did him wrong. I'll say that much. It was as well worked as you expect, this whole match. Bret made every bump look impactful, whether he went into the corner, whether he was getting slammed, whatever bump he took. Granted, those rings were really, really hard, so probably wasn't difficult to make it seem impactful. Bret does fire back. The people were popping because people were starting to really like Bret. And Vlad was there. Vladimir, the super fan, as they call him. The guy that was always in incredible shape, and there was a woman next to him, and I want to say, I think that had to have been his mother. I think it was his mother. I don't know. She looked a little older. Could have been. I mean, I'm not judging, but I was like, I think he mentioned how he was close to his mother, because I saw that documentary that they shot a while ago, and then sat on the shelf for a while. But yeah, Vlad, always incredibly entertaining and just very, very appreciative of the fact that he gained any kind of following. I mean, it's impossible not to notice a guy that had that striking look and just always had that endless enthusiasm. And there was even a bar where, like, Diesel, so, what's up, Vlad? High five. That's cool. It ended up being a time limit draw, this match, that is. Rick and Bret having a great match here, as you would expect. Rick would go on to do, because that's the thing, Rick would go on to do great things as far as being a great heel, but he should have done greater things as being a singles champion. I would have had him at least be a tag team champion again another time, but I don't know who the fuck else he could have teamed up with. Bret, of course, would go on to hold the tag titles again, win the IC title SummerSlam 91, win it back at Mania 8, lose it at SummerSlam 92, I'm fucked, Bret, I'm fucked, and then win the title from Ric Flair, and then hold it forever. No, he certainly didn't get screwed over by Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 9, but Bret's career speaks for itself. I wish Rick Martel had been the IC champion, it's a shame, because he was such a good worker. He would actually last like 52 minutes in the 91 Rumble, which him and Greg Valentine combined for an hour and a half of time. Hour and a half of, like, ring time in there, because Greg Valentine was like 44, 45 minutes. But then Rick Martel would have a comeback in WCW that was short-lived because he suffered an injury at Super Brawl 8 and was retired by sometime in 99. And he had his last match, I think he had his last match in Hawaii, if I remember reading correctly. But there you go. It's a real shame. Hopefully Rick Martel goes in the Hall of Fame. And Brett was pissed, by the way, about this match being a time limit draw because he said bullshit. Dino Bravo took on Brutus the Barber Beefcake in one of the most painful matches that I have ever seen on any of these house shows. Dino Bravo was too jacked up at this point to really move all that well. Brutus was over with the crowd, but he could not work a fucking lick. And then he would get in the parasailing accident, which, granted, his political leans, you'd think he'd be more in line with people getting medical care, but I guess not. But yeah, Brutus Beefcake's a cautionary tale of being, probably, making sure that you're appreciative of the spots that you get when you really don't fucking deserve it. Because go back and look at Brutus outside of teaming with Greg Valentine. Greg Valentine, one of the premier workers of his time, from the 70s into the 80s, even into the 90s, even when he stopped caring, even when he didn't look happy, which Greg never looked happy. Brutus Beefcake would end up beating Mr. Perfect in Mr. Perfect's first loss, which it actually wasn't. And Dino Bravo would face Hacksaw Jim Duggan, face the Texas Tornado, Kerry Von Erich at WrestleMania 7. I don't believe he was part of the WrestleMania 8 card. And then, yeah, Dino was out the door, like, soon after that. Literally out the door, because somebody busted in his door and shot him. And him and Kerry Von Erich dying within weeks of each other in 93 is always eerie. Brutus Beefcake, I mean, he would get so many gimmicks. Like, he had fur face when he came back after his parasailing accident. No, it really was something. YouTube WWF fur face. But put fur face together, and you will actually be amazed that this gimmick was allowed to be in front of people. But then again, Brutus Beefcake, I mean, he'd be the booty man, but before that, he was Brother Brudai, he was the butcher. Your husband's the butcher. M. Night needs to be punched for putting his daughter on camera. But yeah, Brutus Beefcake, terrible in general. I mean, he was a disciple. He would get in better shape. Name one good Brutus Beefcake match. Name one. You can't. There was a bear hug for seemingly 8 years. The sleeper was locked on. Jimmy Hart distracted. Earthquake then came back out. We got a lot of Earthquake on this show. And he picked up Brutus and slammed him in the goddamn post. And yeah, it was a count out. They needed to protect Dino Bravo against Brutus Beefcake. But then again, Brutus Beefcake was Hulk Hogan's friend at the time. And it's a count out, and then Brutus got hit with one elbow. I wrote, do it again. Earthquake did. Thank you. And there we go. Nobody came out to save Brutus for what he was worth. And then we got the main event after the following match. Tugboat, who apparently was just getting the gimmick at this point, because I'm trying to remember when he came in. Because I know he was Big Bubba in Kansas City. No, was it Kansas City? Where was it? Was it Memphis? Fred Ottman had that Big Bubba gimmick and was working and doing stuff. I believe had some time in Japan. If not here, then sometime right after he had left the WWF in 93. But yeah, it was Tugboat against Pez Whatley. Much like Black Bart, I really have no memory of Pez Whatley being in WWF. He must have only been there for a cup of coffee. Fun fact, he was in, I believe, the 96 or 97 World War III match. Maybe it was a 95 World War III match. But Pez Whatley, who was working in Georgia and working around the South for years when the territories were thriving and even when they were dying, Pez Whatley showed up, and I don't think anybody understood Pez Whatley's goddamn gimmick. At least here, but Tugboat, yeah. Fred Ottman, bless Fred Ottman. This crowd seemed annoyed. Who was the heel? Because Pez Whatley looked like he was going for something in his tights. He kept also timber bumping when it looked like Tugboat was going to try to splash him in the corner. Pez Whatley would just hit the corner and then timber bump. And then he did like twice. And it just made no sense. I mean, but whatever. Splash won it. Not good. Not good at all. Pez Wadley, as I said, would go on to do what he did. Making an appearance. I think he died. Is Pez Wadley dead? I don't know if Pez Wadley's dead. I don't want to announce his or say his eulogy, but I know Fred Ottman's still alive. Shockmaster. Unfortunately, he never recovered from that. Fun fact, he was done as a Shockmaster by the end of 93, early 94, and was back in WWF for a spell. I believe wrestling Diesel on an episode of Raw or Superstar. I think it was an episode of Raw sometime in the spring of 94. And the next MSG card is April of 1990. And then the Intercontinental Champion, the Ultimate Warrior, took on Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect, who had not lost a single match at all in WWF. He actually had lost all the time on house shows. But because nothing happened on, nothing was reported except in the dirt sheets, and there was very few people that read that, they could basically maintain this whole thing. Kurt bumped around like a Super Bowl. I said what I said about Ultimate Warrior. Besides the whole queering doesn't make world work thing and the various, political bullshit and batshit crazy conspiracy theories, he was a phenomenon, but he was going to burn out. And he did burn out. Part of the reason is because he had to be carried. He could shake the ropes, he could beat his chest, he could do all that, and he could draw for a brief time. And then it was clear that he was going to flame out. And he did win with the slam and the splash, as you would expect, but Kurt had to bounce around like a Super Bowl, slow the thing down, so Ultimate Warrior could catch his breath, because he would always blow himself up. And then he had to do the camel clutch and do all that, and basically get Ultimate Warrior to do his comeback and win. And then that was it. Then Ultimate Warrior would go on to win the title from Hogan, giving Hogan his first clean loss in years, and that was a big deal. Then the company didn't do him any favors. I'm going to close with this. They did not do him any favors by not having him, having any heels prepared for him to work against. He worked against Ted DiBiase and even worked on some Japanese shows that they had co-promoted with, was it SWS? Is SWS around 1990? I think it was. But even ones that they did co-promoting with New Japan, he would work with Ted DiBiase, and he worked with Rick Rude at SummerSlam 1990, but he'd already worked with Rick Rude all through 89. They didn't have people prepared. Like, they could have had him work with Akeem, but they fired Akeem. They could have had him work. I mean, I'm not saying these could have been television programs, but they could have been house show stuff. You could have built something up, but no, they didn't do that. 1990 is really when WWF started to hit a wall. So, no, Ultimate Warrior was going to last as champion, but they also didn't do him any favors as far as the creative goes. That being said, fuck the Ultimate Warrior. I'm glad he's dead for all the bullshit that he said, and I hope his wife's freaking rotting away too. Hope the daughters grow up to be better people than him. Nevertheless, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter, Letterboxd, Blue Sky handles in the description. I'm John Retland, and until we continue on this journey through hysteria of retro reviewing again, happy trails to you.